The sky over Zareth Prime was an angry swirl of crimson and violet clouds, streaked with the smoke of burning settlements and the distant flare of artillery fire. The battlefield stretched for miles, scarred with craters and littered with fallen warriors, both human and alien. Captain Elias Thorne squinted against the harsh sunlight reflecting off the ash-choked air. His armor was scorched, scratched, and battered, but his resolve burned brighter than any wound. He had seen war before, but nothing like this. The Zarethaturing, multi-limbed aliens with claws sharp as blades and senses honed to detect weakness, were unlike any enemy humanity had faced. They moved with terrifying speed, coordinated as though sharing one mind, striking wherever humans were vulnerable. And yet, here he was, still standing, even though he could feel exhaustion gnawing at every muscle. "Hold the line," Elias shouted to his squad. His voice carried over the din of war, fierce and commanding. Around him, human soldiers struggled to maintain formation, some limping, others crawling, yet none willing to give ground. They knew that if the Zarethi broke through, the entire sector would be overrun. Elias raised his plasma rifle and fired, the bursts cutting down approaching aliens with precision, but every shot felt like a drop in an ocean. The Zarathi were relentless, and his squad was dwindling fast. He watched as his friends fell, some screaming, some silent, and some vanishing in flashes of energy as the aliens' strange weapons tore through flesh and armor alike. The horror of war pressed down on him, but Elias knew fear was a luxury he could not afford. Then it happened. A heavy tremor shook the ground, and a group of Zarethi warriors charged directly at him. He fired rapidly, but a sudden, overwhelming force struck him from the side, knocking him to the ground. Pain lanced through his shoulder, and he struggled to rise, only to find himself surrounded. He braced himself, expecting the end. The alien horde advanced, their claws glinting under the chaotic sky, and then something impossible happened. A shadow fell over him, larger than any Zarethi he had seen. A figure, muscular and towering, swooped down. It had a humanoid shape, but with powerful limbs covered in dense, shimmering fur, eyes glowing with sharp intelligence, and claws capable of splitting stone. With a speed that defied comprehension, the creature grabbed him, lifting him effortlessly off the ground. WHA. Elias barely had time to react before the world blurred around him. The ground fell away as the creature sprinted across the battlefield, leaping over craters and fallen warriors as if gravity itself obeyed it. His heart pounded not with fear, exactly, but with a wild, confusing mixture of adrenaline and astonishment. The creature, he would later learn her name, was Lyra, spoke. Not in words, but in a low, commanding series of tones that somehow communicated meaning. Elias could not understand the language, yet he felt an odd sense of reassurance. She was not attacking him. She was rescuing him. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time felt strange when he was airborne, at impossible speed. Below, the battlefield shrank into a chaotic blur of fire and shadow. Finally, Lyra descended into a rocky canyon far from the fighting. Elias gasped for breath as she gently lowered him onto a flat ledge. He tried to rise, but his body protested. Wounds throbbed, and blood stained his uniform. Through the pain, he stared at the beast woman. She stood over him, imposing and majestic, with amber eyes that seemed to pierce right through him. Her fur shimmered in the dim light, patterned in hues he had no names for, and her muscles rippled as she moved. There was a wild elegance in her stance, a combination of power and grace that left him speechless. And then she did something unexpected. She bowed her head slightly, almost in deference, before circling him and inspecting his injuries with sharp, calculating eyes. Elias realized, in a strange, almost surreal way, that he was being judged not as an enemy, but as a being whose worth was being measured. He coughed, wincing at the pain. "Who are you?" he managed, his voice hoarse. Lyra tilted her head, studying him. Then, slowly, she emitted a sequence of low tones, almost melodic, that seemed to echo in the canyon walls. Elias had no idea what it meant, but the cadence, the rhythm, somehow conveyed intent. He felt her approval. Somehow, in that moment, he understood. She respected him as he lay there. Catching his breath, he noticed movement in the shadows of the canyon. Figures emerged, more of Lyra's kind, each as formidable and strange as she was. Their eyes were keen, assessing, but there was no immediate hostility. Instead, they paused, seemingly debating among themselves in their own language. Elias realized that he had stumbled into a new world, one that had existed long before humans arrived on ZerethPrime. The Karthus species Lyra belonged to were not mere animals or enemies. They were an intelligent, proud, and formidable civilization. Their culture, he could sense even now, valued strength, courage, and cunning. And perhaps, in their own way, they valued honor. Lyra stepped forward, bowing slightly to the others, then looking back at him. Though he could not understand her words, her posture communicated something clear. She had saved him, and she was staking her reputation on his worth. For Elias, the realization was staggering. He had trained for combat, for strategy, for survival in the worst conditions humanity could offer, but nothing had prepared him for this. He was not just a soldier now. He was a guest in an alien world, judged by a people whose standards he could only begin to comprehend. The Karth clan moved with purpose, leading him through the canyon to their settlement, hidden in a cluster of cliffs and natural fortresses. The structures were unlike anything he had ever seen. Organic towers seemingly grown from the rock itself, decorated with glowing crystals that pulsed faintly, illuminating the pathways in soft, iridescent light as they entered the settlement. Elias noticed the Karth engaging in tasks both domestic and martial. Some sharpened massive blades with precision, others trained in intricate combat dances. And still others tended to small animals that scuttled or leaped across the rocky terrain. Every action seemed deliberate, purposeful, and meaningful. He felt a pang of humility. Humans prided themselves on order and discipline. Yet this alien culture executed both with a fluidity that humans could barely imagine. Lyra led him to a raised platform in the center of the settlement, where an elder awaited. The elder was immense, even by Karth standards. With silver-streaked fur and eyes that glimmered with centuries of knowledge, he regarded Elias with a piercing gaze, silent but potent. Elias straightened as best he could, trying to convey dignity despite his pain. I am Captain Elias Thorne, he said. The elder, interrupted with a deep, resonant series of sounds. Though incomprehensible, the tone carried weight, authority, and a hint of curiosity. Lyra translated with gestures, sharp and deliberate. He is a warrior, she conveyed, brave in battle, wounded but unbroken. He survived where others did not. A murmur ran through the gathered Karth. They approached cautiously, circling him, inspecting him, as if trying to see through not just his flesh, but his very spirit. Elias could feel their scrutiny, like fire on his skin, testing his resolve, measuring his courage, and evaluating his character. Finally, the elder spoke again, in a combination of sounds and gestures that Lyra interpreted. He shows the spirit of the Karth, she said. Strength and courage, clarity and decision, honor and action. We will see if he is worthy of our respect. Elias nodded, though he was unsure what such tests might entail. He had faced death countless times, led squads into impossible situations, and stared down foes that no human should survive. And yet this felt different. The stakes were no longer life or death. They were identity, respect, and trust across species. Over the next hours, Elias observed the Karth at close range. He saw how they communicated silently, coordinated movements with subtle gestures, and maintained an unspoken order that humans could not replicate. He marveled at their discipline, their loyalty to one another, and the sheer raw power contained in their sinewy bodies. Despite the language barrier, he began to feel a strange kinship with them. Courage, he realized, was universal. Honor transcended species, and resilience the ability to rise again. Even when all odds were against you was something he and the Karth shared. Night fell over the canyon, the sky now a swirling mass of stars and alien constellations. Elias sat beside a fire that burned with strange crystalline flames, warming his hands and body. Lyra sat across from him, her amber eyes reflecting the firelight. For the first time since the battle began, Elias felt a flicker of hope. He knew the war on Zereth Prime was far from over. Humans still needed to fight for survival, and the Zerothi would not rest. But for now, he was safe. He was not alone, and in the quiet, he realized something extraordinary. In the heart of an alien world, amidst creatures humans had once called monsters, he had found allies, not enemies. Lyra nudged him gently, as if sensing his thoughts, and emitted a soft melodic tone. Though he did not understand the words, he understood the sentiment. She trusted him, and perhaps, he thought, in some small way, he could begin to trust her as well. The battle had taken everything from him, his squad, his comrades, the life he knew, but in return, it had given him a chance to become something more, to bridge worlds, to prove that human courage could be recognized, even revered, beyond the stars. Elias leaned back, letting the morning light filtered through the jagged cliffs of the Kareth settlement, painting the rocky terrain in warm gold and deep shadows. Captain Elias Thorne awoke on a smooth, stone-like bed in a chamber carved naturally from the cliffs. The walls glimmered faintly with embedded crystals, reflecting light in subtle rainbows. He blinked against the brightness and slowly became aware of the figures moving around him. Kareth warriors, large and graceful, tending to various tasks with fluid precision. Lyra was there, of course, her amber eyes watching him carefully. She crouched beside his bed, her expression a mix of curiosity and gentle vigilance. She moved with the ease of a predator and the awareness of a scholar. Elias realized that every movement of the Kareth conveyed purpose. Nothing was wasted, nothing left to chance. "Good morning," he said hoarsely, his throat dry from sleep. Lyra tilted her head, the motion elegant and deliberate. She made a series of soft, melodic tones, and after a moment gestured for him to follow. Elias pushed himself up, wincing as his injuries protested. The Kareth had treated them with strange, advanced methods, and though the pain lingered, he felt remarkably stronger than he had expected. He stepped into the courtyard. Immediately struck by the scope of the settlement, the Kareth had built structures that merged seamlessly with the cliffs, using both rock and organic materials, and glowing crystals illuminated paths without artificial lamps. Humans often relied on tools, machines, and weapons. Here, nature and technology seemed to coexist effortlessly. Lyra led him to a group of young Kareth warriors practicing combat drills. Their movements were precise yet fluid, combining raw strength with calculated grace. As Elias watched, he felt a pang of respect. These were not merely soldiers, they were artisans of battle. Each step, each strike, each dodge was a statement of mastery over self and environment. "You will train," Lyra said finally, her translation simple, "to understand us, to be understood." Elias nodded. He understood that training here would not be like human drills. This was more than physical, it was discipline, focus, and comprehension of alien instincts. He followed Lyra to a flat, open arena, carved naturally from the cliffside. The first test was simple in appearance. Kareth faced him, and they circled, measuring him with sharp, intelligent eyes. One lunged, and Elias dodged instinctively. But the goal was not to strike, they were testing his reactions, his awareness, his ability to adapt. For hours, they moved like shadows in storms, pushing him to anticipate, react, and respect the rhythm of their combat. By midday, Elias was exhausted. His muscles burned, but he also felt exhilaration he had not known in years. This was not a battlefield of chaos and fear. This was a test of mind and body, and he was learning to move as the Kareth did, not to overpower them, but to match their rhythm, to think in their flow. Later, Lyra brought him to a smaller chamber where elders awaited. The air was thick with the scent of minerals and something faintly sweet, like flowers that bloomed in hidden crevices. The elders were immense, older than any human could imagine, their fur streaked with silver and their eyes glowing faintly with wisdom. They studied him silently, and Elias felt again that piercing gaze, So they were seeing more than flesh, they were seeing his spirit. Lyra translated their soft tones carefully. We see courage. We see intelligence. But can he understand us? Can he think like we think? Elias swallowed and straightened. I will learn, he said firmly. I want to understand. A faint ripple of approval passed among the elders. One stepped forward, massive, even by Kareth's standards, and gestured for him to follow. Elias obeyed, and they moved to a chamber filled with strange devices and patterns etched into stone. This is your next trial, Lyra explained. It is not about strength. It is about insight. Elias observed the patterns, resembling a combination of puzzles, traps, and symbols. The elders demonstrated a sequence, then gestured for him to replicate it. At first he failed, fumbling awkwardly, trying to apply human logic to alien reasoning. The Kareth were patient but unyielding. They corrected him with gestures, nudges, and demonstrations. Never harsh, but always demanding precision. Hours passed. Sweat dripped from his brow, but he persisted. Slowly, his human mind began to shift, adapting to their patterns, seeing logic in ways he had never considered. He realized that intelligence and reasoning were not limited to human methods. The Kareth had developed systems of thought that were as rigorous as any human discipline, yet fluid and alive, reflecting the natural world around them. By evening, he completed the trial. The elders nodded, subtle yet profound, acknowledging his effort. One elder stepped closer, placing a massive paw-like hand gently on his shoulder. Elias felt an unexpected warmth thought, just physical, but a recognition of his determination, his ability to adapt, and his willingness to respect another culture later. Lyra led him through the settlement again. As they walked, they passed families, warriors, and artisans, all living in harmony with the land and each other. Children of the Kareth watched him curiously, their eyes wide with fascination. He smiled, waving awkwardly, and they responded with shy gestures of welcome. You will become one of us, Lyra said softly, but only if you prove yourself. Only if you show that courage, honor, and respect are not just words, but actions. Elias nodded. He understood that this was more than acceptance, it was a responsibility. If he was to live among the Kareth, he would have to honor their ways, protect their people, and lead when necessary. The next days passed in a blur of training, observation, and learning. Elias was pushed to his limits, physically and mentally. He ran through obstacle courses, learned to anticipate Kareth movements, and even engaged in mock battles designed to test not just skill, but leadership. Each time he faltered, the Kareth corrected him patiently. Each time he succeeded, they acknowledged him with subtle gestures of approval and inclination of the head. A tap on the shoulder, a low approving tone. Despite the challenge, Elias felt a growing sense of belonging. Here, in this alien world, he could be more than a soldier. He could be a bridge between species, a symbol of courage, and a living proof that humanity could rise above fear and prejudice. One evening, while Elias rested beside a river that wound through the cliffs, Lyra approached him. The water reflected the twin moons of Prime, casting shimmering light across their faces. You are changing, she said, in her melodic tones translated by gestures. You think differently. You move differently. You understand differently. Elias smiled faintly. I'm learning, and I want to do more. I want to help you. All of you. Lyra regarded him silently, her gaze intense but not hostile. Finally, she nodded. Then the elders will hear of you tomorrow. They will decide if you may advance further. Your courage has earned their attention, but your spirit will earn their trust. The next morning, Elias was summoned to the central hall. The elders were gathered in a semicircle, massive and imposing. The Kareth warriors formed a silent perimeter, watching with curiosity and respect. Elias approached with careful steps. Aware of the weight of the moment, Lyra stood beside him, her presence both reassuring and commanding. The elders communicated in low, resonant tones, and after a tense moment, Lyra interpreted, You have shown strength. You have shown courage. You have shown respect. But now, we must see your leadership. Challenge was set before him, to organize a team of young Kareth warriors in a simulated battle. The goal was not to win by brute force, but to coordinate strategy, anticipate movements, and ensure the safety of all participants. Elias felt the familiar thrill of command. He had led squads in countless missions, but never with such alien teammates. Their instincts, their senses, their capabilities were unlike anything he had trained with. It would require adaptation, insight, and trust. The simulation began. The young Kareth moved swiftly, leaping, striking, and evading with incredible speed. Elias directed them with a combination of gestures, commands, and intuition. At first, coordination faltered. His instructions seemed slow to human. But he adapted, observing their responses, learning their patterns, and adjusting on the fly. Minutes passed, and the exercise became a blur of motion, thought, and decision. Elias found a rhythm, guiding the team not by domination but by understanding, using their strengths to complement one another. By the end, every participant had performed to the best of their ability, and the elders acknowledged the success with subtle but unmistakable approval. The hall erupted, not in sound, but in a wave of energy, as Kareth communicated with tones and gestures that resonated in the stone walls. Elias felt a surge of pride and humility. He had not only survived their judgment but had begun to earn their trust. Lyra approached him after the trial. Her eyes glimmered with satisfaction. "They respect you," she said, "not just for courage, but for understanding. You are one of us, if you choose to accept it." Elias nodded, exhausted but elated. "I choose," he said firmly. "I want to learn more, help more, and be worthy of your trust." That night, as he lay under the alien stars, Elias reflected on how far he had come. From the battlefield, where survival had been his only goal, to the heart of the Kareth settlement, where understanding, respect, and leadership were tested, he realized he had begun a transformation. He was no longer just a human soldier. The dawn over the Kareth cliffs brought a calm that belied the challenges ahead. Captain Elias Thorne had spent weeks among the Kareth, learning their ways, understanding their thinking, and earning their respect. Yet, as the elders approached him one morning, a mixture of curiosity and weight pressed upon him. "Today you lead," Lyra translated from the elders' complex tones, her amber eyes serious, not as a student, not as a warrior, as a guide, a strategist, and a decision-maker. "Will you accept?" Elias straightened, the scars on his body aching from past battles, but his spirit unbowed. "I will," he said firmly. The words carried the weight of promise, not arrogance. The elders led him to the central arena, where a full contingent of Kareth warriors awaited. The exercise was not merely training, it was a simulation of real conflict. Rival clans of the Kareth, fierce and powerful, often contested territory, and Elias's leadership would now be tested. Lyra stood at his side, a silent pillar of support. "Remember," she said, "strength is respected, but wisdom is honored." The opposing clan emerged from the rocky shadows, each warrior bristling with power and anticipation. Elias observed their formations, their subtle signals, and their confident stance. To a human soldier, their abilities seemed impossible, leaps that defied gravity, strikes that could crush stone, and coordination that suggested a collective intelligence. He took a deep breath and issued his commands. Unlike human troops, the Kareth responded to intention, not just words. He had to think, anticipate, and communicate in a way that spoke to instinct as much as strategy. At first, there was confusion. His directions were interpreted differently than intended. A few young warriors hesitated, misreading signals, while others overcompensated, leaving gaps in their formation. Elias felt a familiar surge of tension, the kind he knew from countless human battles. But he forced himself to remain calm. "Adapt," he muttered under his breath. "Understand, don't command blindly." He watched, learned, and adjusted. A subtle gesture here, a quick reposition there, and the team began to flow together. They moved with purpose, reacting to the enemy's actions not by force alone, but by intuition, strategy, and foresight. Elias felt a thrill he had not known since leading his own human squads, the exhilaration of uniting a team, of turning individual strength into a coordinated, unstoppable force. The mock battle raged for hours. Elias directed the warriors through ambushes, defensive formations, and tactical retreats. He encouraged creativity, rewarding clever maneuvers and calculated risks. Slowly, the opposing clan began to falter, outmaneuvered not by sheer strength, but by coordination, insight, and unshakable resolve. By the end, the simulation was a resounding success. The elders stepped forward, their approval quiet but unmistakable. Ilias's human methods had blended with Kareth instincts, producing a synergy neither species had anticipated. Lyra approached him, her voice softer than usual. "They see you not as a foreigner, but as a leader," she said. "You have begun to bridge the gap between worlds." Elias nodded, feeling both pride and humility. Leading humans was one thing, but leading the Kareth adapting to their instincts, understanding their culture and earning their trust was an entirely new challenge. Yet, he had done it. The days that followed were a whirlwind of preparation. The Kareth elders consulted him on strategies for protecting their territory and negotiating with rival clans. Elias suggested combining human tactics with Kariath, agility, and strength. He introduced concepts of reconnaissance, strategic positioning, and contingency planning. The elders listened carefully, their eyes thoughtful, their expressions unreadable, but gradually. They began to integrate his ideas. It was during one of these discussions that the first signs of an external threat emerged. Scouts reported unusual movements near the border of Kareth territory, a larger alien force. Unlike the rival clans, advancing with unknown intentions. Elias studied the reports, analyzing patterns and possibilities. The Kareth elders exchanged low tones, their expressions tense. "This is unlike any test or challenge before," Lyra translated. "These invaders are beyond our usual rivals. Strength alone may not be enough." Elias considered the options. He realized that human ingenuity, the ability to anticipate, adapt, and coordinate under pressure would be essential. The Kareth were strong, fast, and intelligent, but their tactics relied on instinct and honor. By introducing strategy and foresight, they could overcome even a larger, more unpredictable threat. Preparations began immediately. Elias worked alongside Lyra to train the Kareth warriors, combining their natural abilities with human tactics. He taught formations that allowed them to exploit their speed and strength while minimizing exposure to enemy attacks. He introduced communication signals and contingency plans, ensuring that even in the chaos of battle, every warrior knew their role. At the same time, Elias recognized the importance of diplomacy. Humans might mistake the Kareth for enemies. Given the earlier conflicts on ZerethPrime, he drafted a plan to communicate with human forces cautiously, signaling that the Kareth were allies, not foes. Trust would be fragile, but he knew that alliances could tip the balance of survival. Night fell before the preparations were complete. Elias stood atop the cliffs, looking down at the settlement below. The warriors moved with silent precision, training and sharpening their skills. The air was tense, charged with anticipation, but beneath it was a rhythmo heartbeat of determination, courage, and trust. Lyra joined him, her expression unreadable yet calm. "You carry much," she said, her voice low, "but you inspire much as well." The Kareth see not just a human, but a protector, a strategist, a symbol. Elias looked at her, grateful yet aware of the weight he bore. "I hope I can live up to it," he admitted. "I hope I can keep everyone safe." "You already have," she replied. "By earning their trust, by guiding them, by showing that courage and wisdom are not limited to one species." The following morning brought the first encounter with the mysterious alien force. Scouts reported an army larger and more coordinated than any rival clan. The Alien Stall. Armored creatures with energy weapons and claws like elongated blades moved in patterns that suggested intelligence and strategy. Elias surveyed the battlefield from the cliffs, His mind raced with calculations, strategies, and contingencies. He directed the Kareth forces into positions that maximized their strengths and minimized vulnerabilities. Lyra moved at his side, conveying subtle gestures, signals, and observations. The battle began with a thunderous clash. The alien army surged forward, and the Kareth met them with ferocious strength. Elias directed flanking maneuvers, coordinated ambushes, and rapid counterattacks. The Kareth, guided by both instinct and strategy, moved with an almost supernatural synchronicity at first. The aliens seemed unstoppable, their advanced weapons and coordination overwhelming. Yet Elias's planning, combined with the Kareth's agility and strength, began to turn the tide. He anticipated enemy movements, adjusted formations in real time, and inspired the warriors to push beyond what they thought possible. Amid the chaos, Elias noticed the ingenuity of human tactics blending with alien instincts. Kareth warriors used terrain, timing, and teamwork in ways he had suggested, and the results were astonishing. Cliffs became defensive barriers, narrow passes turned into traps, ambushes struck with precision that human soldiers could only admire. Hours passed, and the battle reached its climax. Elias coordinated a final maneuver, directing the Kareth to encircle the alien force while striking from multiple angles. The alien army faltered, unable to adapt to the combined strength, speed, and strategy. Victory, once uncertain, now seemed within reach, as the last of the alien invaders retreated. The Kareth erupted in a wave of tones, gestures, and movements in expression of triumph, relief, and respect. The elders approached Elias, their eyes glowing faintly with approval. They communicated not in words, but in a profound recognition. He had proven himself, not just as a human, but as a leader, a protector, and a strategist. Lyra stood beside him, pride shining in her amber eyes. "You have done more than survive," she said. "You have led. You have united. You have inspired. The clan sees you as one of their own." Elias felt a surge of emotion, pride, humility, and awe. He had come to Zeroth Prime as a soldier, fighting for survival. Now, he was a leader, a bridge between species, and a symbol of courage, wisdom, and honor. In the days that followed, humans made contact with the Kareth settlement. They were wary, expecting hostility, but Elias negotiated carefully. Through demonstration, strategy, and clear communication, he showed that the Kareth were not enemies but allies. Human forces, initially suspicious, began to see the value in cooperation, and tentative alliances were formed. Elias spent his nights reflecting on the journey. He had crossed the battlefield, faced near death, been judged by an alien clan, and risen to lead them in ways that challenged both his own limits and theirs. He had proven that human ingenuity, courage, and honor could not only survive in alien worlds but thrive, inspire, and unite. Lyra remained at his side, a constant presence, guiding, supporting, and observing. Together, they prepared for the next challenges, knowing that the galaxy was vast. Dangers were many, and the need for trust, leadership, and courage would never end. The twin sons of Zeroth Prime cast long shadows over the jagged cliffs as Captain Elias Thorne surveyed the valley below. The Kareth settlement sprawled across the rocky terrain, alive with activity. Warriors sharpened weapons, scouts returned with reports, and the younger generation practiced drills with intensity that reminded Elias of human cadets, but more disciplined, more precise, and far faster. Lyra stood beside him, her amber eyes scanning the horizon. "They are coming," she said in low tones, her posture alert and tense. Elias nodded, gripping the railing of the cliffside platform. For weeks, intelligence reports had predicted the approach of a massive alien force, larger and more organized than anything either humans or Kareth had encountered before. This was no mere skirmish. This was a battle that would decide the survival of two species and determine the fate of the planet. "We can't just wait for them to strike," Elias said, his voice firm. "We have to coordinate, combine our strengths, and act before they can overwhelm us." Lyra glanced at him, a flicker of admiration in her eyes. You lead. Not just the Careth, but all who will fight. Will the humans trust you? Elias paused, considering the human contingent stationed nearby. They were cautious, tense, uncertain about allying with an alien species they barely understood. They will have to, he said. If we want to survive, we fight together. We lead together. The plan was complex but simple in principle. Humans would provide ranged firepower and tactical support, while Careth warriors used speed, strength, and agility to flank, confuse, and disrupt the enemy. Elias spent the next hours coordinating every unit, ensuring clear communication, marking positions, and setting contingencies. He taught the Careth signals humans could understand, and adapted human commands to their natural instincts. When the alien force finally appeared on the horizon, a dark wave of armored forms and pulsating weapons, Elias felt a familiar thrill, the same he had experienced during battles on Earth, but now magnified by the stakes and the presence of a species he had come to respect deeply. The clash began with a deafening roar. Energy beams streaked across the valley, meeting plasma and laser fire from human forces. The Careth surged forward, leaping across the battlefield with terrifying speed, their claws striking with precision and power that left even seasoned human soldiers in awe. Elias moved through the chaos, directing forces, coordinating flanks, and anticipating enemy maneuvers. He could see the difference his leadership made. Humans and Careth were no longer two separate armies. They moved like a single organism, combining brains, strength, and instinct in ways neither species could achieve alone. Lyra fought at his side, swift and powerful, a blur of fur and muscle as she struck down enemy combatants with calculated precision. Her presence was both reassuring and inspiring, showing the Careth and humans alike the possibilities of cooperation. Hours passed, the battle raging with intensity. The alien force adapted, attempting to exploit weaknesses, but Elias was always a step ahead. He redirected units, anticipated attacks, and inspired his warriors to take risks that were calculated, not reckless. Every success bolstered morale. Every failure became a lesson in adaptation at a critical moment. The alien command Centera, massive armored structure at the center of their formation, threatened to break through the Careth lines. Elias realized that a direct assault would be costly. He devised a plan, risky but precise. Humans would draw fire and weaken the defenses, while the Careth, guided by his strategy, would strike from multiple angles, cutting off retreat and isolating the center. The maneuver required perfect timing. Elias counted seconds, signaling units with gestures, tones, and orders adapted for both species. The operation began. Human squads provided suppressing fire, drawing energy blasts and attention. The Careth moved like shadows, climbing cliffs, leaping over rocks, and striking with devastating force. The alien command center faltered. Its defenses weakened, its forces disoriented by attacks from multiple directions. Elias directed the final push, a coordinated strike led by Lyra and a group of elite Careth warriors. The energy weapons of the alien force were neutralized, their ranks broken, and the remaining enemies surrendered or fled. When the dust settled, silence fell across the battlefield. Humans and Careth alike took stock of their losses fewer than expected, thanks to precise coordination and mutual protection. The alien force had been defeated, not just by strength, but by unity, strategy, and courage. Elias allowed himself a brief moment to breathe. Looking over the battlefield with a mixture of relief and pride, he had led them through the chaos, guiding both species to victory without unnecessary loss. And in that victory, he saw something more profound, proof that humans, with courage, intelligence, and honor, could inspire even the most alien of species. The Careth elders approached, massive and imposing even after battle, their eyes glowing faintly with approval. They communicated in low, resonant tones, and Lyra translated, "You have done more than led. You have united us. You have shown that humanity's courage can shine even among the stars. You are worthy of honor and more. Elias felt a surge of humility. He had expected respect, perhaps even gratitude, but this acknowledgement went beyond mere words. It was recognition of his spirit, his intellect, his determination to rise above fear and prejudice. Lyra stepped forward, placing a massive paw-like hand on his shoulder. "You are one of us," she said, "not just in battle, but in spirit. Your courage, your wisdom, your heart, it guides us all." The human soldiers who had been wary of the Careth at first now approached Elias with tentative respect. They saw that the alien warriors had fought with honor, coordinated flawlessly, and followed his leadership without question. It was clear to them that humanity's ingenuity, courage, and ability to inspire had been the key to victory. In the following days, the alliance between humans and Careth solidified. Training exercises continued, but now with a sense of purpose beyond preparation. This was a partnership. Humans learned the Careth methods, their instinctual fighting, their precise coordination. Careth warriors absorbed human tactics, using strategy and foresight to complement their natural abilities. Together, they built defenses, established communication networks, and strengthened bonds that would last far beyond a single battle. Elias spent time with both species, walking among them, observing and teaching. He shared stories of human ingenuity, improvisation, and courage, while learning from the Careth their ways of life, their ethics, and their respect for nature and honor. Through mutual exchange, they discovered strengths they had never known individually. Lyra often accompanied him, guiding him through cultural rituals, teaching him subtle communication methods, and observing his leadership. Their bond had grown into a partnership of trust, mutual respect, and unspoken understanding. In battle, in strategy, and in daily life, they complemented each other, forming a symbol of unity for both species. One evening, as twin moons rose over the cliffs, casting silver light across the settlement, Elias stood beside Lyra on a high platform overlooking the valley. Warriors of both species moved below, training and sharing stories. The air was filled with a sense of possibility, hope, and shared purpose. "We have come far," Elias said quietly, his gaze sweeping over the settlement. "But there will be more challenges. Other worlds, other threats. We need to be ready." Lyra's eyes reflected the moon's, bright and unwavering. "And we will be," she replied, "because you have shown us what humanity can be, courageous, wise, and honorable. That spirit will guide us through whatever comes." Elias nodded. The truth of her words settled in his chest like a warm fire. Humans had crossed the stars, faced the impossible, and survived. They had built alliances, led armies, and inspired even alien civilizations. And now, on Zareth Prime, that spirit had created something new: unity between species. A force stronger than any weapon, and a promise that courage and honor could endure across worlds. In the following weeks, the Careth and humans worked together to secure the planet, repairing settlements, fortifying positions, and preparing for any further threats. Ilias's role evolved from battlefield commander to diplomat, teacher, and unifying figure. He mediated disputes, guided strategic planning, and continued to inspire both species through courage and example. The humans learned to respect Careth culture, adapting to their rituals, understanding their ethics, and embracing their code of honor. The Careth, in turn, respected human ingenuity, adaptability, and unwavering courage. Together, they created a hybrid approach to survival, blending instinct, strategy, strength, and intellect into an unparalleled force. One day, the elders called a gathering in the central arena. Warriors of both species assembled, standing in rows that reflected unity and respect. Elias, standing beside Lyra, listened as the elders communicated their decision. Lyra translated, "You have led with courage, wisdom, and honor. You have united us. You are no longer just a human or an outsider. You are our leader, our king, in both spirit and action." A wave of awe and respect rippled through the crowd. Careth warriors bowed, Humans raised their hands in acknowledgement, and children cheered. Elias felt a mixture of humility, pride, and responsibility. He had never sought power or recognition, yet here it was.